The morning sun cast long shadows across Kensington Palace as Catherine, the Princess of Wales, sat quietly in her favorite chair by the window. The doctors had given her 6 months, but that was 8 months ago. Her strength was fading faster than autumn leaves, yet her spirit remained as bright as ever. William found her there, as he did every morning, watching the gardens where their children used to play. "The daffodils are blooming early this year," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with wonder. William knelt beside her chair, taking her frail hand in his. Even now, after 20 years of marriage, her touch still sent warmth through his entire being. The diagnosis had changed everything and nothing at the same time. They still shared the same jokes, still looked at each other with the same love that had begun at university. The palace staff moved quietly through the halls, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. Everyone knew. The whole country knew, though the official statement spoke only of ongoing treatment and positive spirits. Catherine had insisted on maintaining as much normalcy as possible. She still reviewed her charity work, still asked about the children's studies, still worried about William taking on too much responsibility. "I've been thinking about our wedding day," she said, her eyes distant but peaceful. "Do you remember how nervous you were? Your hands were shaking so badly during the vows." William smiled, remembering how she had given him a tiny, reassuring squeeze when he stumbled over the words. Even then, she had been his anchor, his steady presence in a world that never stopped watching. Their 3 children had been told everything. George, now 20 and studying at university, had inherited his father's sense of duty but his mother's gentle heart. Charlotte, 18 and preparing for her final school exams, possessed Catherine's quiet strength and natural grace. Little Louis, still only 15, tried to be brave but sometimes crawled into bed between his parents just like when he was small. The morning routine continued as it had for months. William would help Catherine with her medications, they would share breakfast in their private dining room, and she would rest while he handled the endless stream of royal duties. But today felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, an unspoken understanding that time was becoming more precious with each passing hour. Catherine had stopped her chemotherapy treatments 2 weeks earlier. The doctors had presented the options clearly: continue fighting with diminishing returns and increasing pain, or focus on comfort and family time. The choice had been easier than anyone expected. "I want to be present for whatever time we have left," she had told William. Really present, not sick from treatments. The decision had rippled through the royal household like a stone dropped in still water. Palace staff who had served the family for decades found themselves wiping away tears in empty corridors. The Queen Consort had visited twice this week alone, bringing homemade soup and staying for quiet conversations about grandchildren and gardens. As the morning stretched into afternoon, Catherine felt the familiar wave of fatigue washing over her. But instead of retreating to bed as she usually did, she asked William to walk with her through the palace gardens. They moved slowly, her arm linked through his, stopping frequently to rest on benches that had been strategically placed along the paths. "I want to see the rose garden once more," she said, though the roses wouldn't bloom for another month. They walked there anyway, among the bare thorny stems that would soon burst with color and fragrance. Catherine could picture it all perfectly: the deep red David Austin roses, the pale pink climbing variety that covered the arbor where they sometimes had afternoon tea, the white roses that bloomed near the small fountain. The afternoon light began to fade as they made their way back to the palace. Catherine was exhausted but content, leaning more heavily on William's arm with each step. The photographers, with their long lenses usually stationed at the palace gates, had been unusually respectful in recent weeks. Even they seemed to understand that some moments were too sacred for public consumption. That evening, as William helped Catherine prepare for bed, she suddenly stopped in front of their bedroom mirror. Her reflection showed the toll the illness had taken: the weight loss, the pale complexion, the silk scarf that had become a daily necessity. But her eyes still held that spark that had first captured William's attention all those years ago at St. Andrew's University. "I'm still me," she said quietly, touching her reflection. "Underneath all of this, I'm still the girl who fell in love with a prince and somehow convinced him to love her back." William stepped behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist, careful not to hold too tightly. In the mirror, they looked like the couple they had always been, just older, wiser, and infinitely more precious to each other than ever before. The next few days brought an unexpected gift. Catherine seemed to rally. Her appetite improved slightly, and she was able to spend longer periods sitting up and engaging with visitors. The children came home from their respective schools, filling the palace with laughter and the comfortable chaos of family life. George brought his girlfriend Emma, a lovely girl studying literature who treated Catherine with the perfect balance of respect and genuine affection. Charlotte arrived with armfuls of drawings and paintings from her art classes, spreading them across Catherine's bed like colorful quilts. "I painted this one thinking of you," she said, showing her mother a watercolor of a field of wildflowers. "The teacher said it captures light beautifully, just like you always do." Catherine held the painting close, tears streaming down her cheeks. Not from sadness, but from overwhelming pride in the remarkable young woman her daughter had become. Louis, ever the entertainer, regaled his parents with stories from school, complete with dramatic reenactments of his rugby matches. He had inherited William's height and Catherine's expressive eyes, and watching him gesture wildly while telling his tales reminded both parents of all the ordinary, extraordinary moments they had shared as a family. These simple interactions felt more valuable than any state dinner or official ceremony they had ever attended. The palace staff noticed the change in atmosphere immediately. There was more laughter echoing through the halls, more requests for tea and biscuits, more life flowing through rooms that had felt hushed and careful for months. Catherine even managed to join the family for dinner in the formal dining room, though she ate very little and needed to rest afterward. During these precious days, Catherine and William found themselves talking about everything and nothing. They reminisced about their courtship, laughing about the media frenzy that had surrounded their relationship from the very beginning. Catherine remembered hiding in her flat, afraid to go out because of the photographers. William recalled the overwhelming guilt he had felt about dragging her into the spotlight, and how she had reassured him with characteristic grace. "I never regretted it," she told him one evening as they sat by the fireplace. "Not once. Even when the criticism was harsh. Even when I felt like I was drowning in protocol and expectations. I never regretted choosing this life with you." William reached for her hand, marveling at how she could still comfort him even now, when he should be the one providing strength and reassurance. They also talked about the future, though these conversations were more difficult. Catherine had written letters for each child's major milestones: graduations, weddings, the births of their own children. She had recorded video messages for birthdays she wouldn't be there to celebrate. William found her one afternoon in her private study, addressing envelopes in her careful handwriting. "For Charlotte's 21st, she explained without looking up, "and George's wedding whenever that happens. I want them to know I'm thinking of them, even if I can't be there physically." The practical side of Catherine's nature had always been one of the things William loved most about her, but seeing her prepare for her absence felt like a physical blow. The royal physicians were monitoring Catherine closely, adjusting her medications to keep her as comfortable as possible. Dr. Matthews, who had been with the family for over a decade, spoke honestly about what to expect in the coming weeks. The good days would become fewer, the difficult ones more frequent. But for now they were blessed with time that felt almost normal. Catherine insisted on maintaining some of her royal duties, though they were adapted to her condition. She held virtual meetings with her patronages, recording brief messages of support and encouragement for various charitable causes. Her final public appearance would be a short video message for Children's Mental Health Week, filmed in the palace gardens she loved so much. In the message, she looked directly into the camera with the poise and warmth that had made her beloved by millions. "Remember that you are valued, you are loved, and you have so much to offer the world," she said. The words would later be remembered as a reflection of her own approach to life, always focusing on others, always finding the positive, always believing in the goodness of people. The filming exhausted her more than expected, but Catherine was satisfied with the work. "If this is my last public message," she told William, "I want it to be about hope and love." The video would be released the following week, though by then the circumstances would be very different. That evening, the entire family gathered in Catherine's bedroom. The children climbed onto the large bed, careful not to jostle their mother, and they watched old family videos on William's laptop. There were holidays in Scotland, Christmas mornings at Sandringham, Birthday parties in the garden, ordinary moments that had been recorded without any thought that they would become treasured memories. Look how little Louis was. Charlotte laughed, pointing to the screen where a 5-year-old Louis was chasing bubbles at a garden party. He could barely walk properly. Louis protested loudly, which only made everyone laugh harder. Catherine closed her eyes and listened to the sound of her family's laughter, storing it away in her heart like a precious jewel. Later, after the children had reluctantly gone to their own rooms, William and Catherine lay in the darkness talking quietly. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "I'm sad about leaving you all, but I'm not afraid. We've had such a beautiful life together." William pulled her closer, feeling the fragility of her frame against his chest, and wondered how he would ever find the strength to say goodbye. The morning arrived with unusual stillness. Catherine woke before dawn, as she had been doing for weeks now, but something felt different. The pain that had been her constant companion seemed distant, replaced by a strange sense of clarity and peace. She lay quietly beside William, listening to his steady breathing, memorizing the sound she had fallen asleep to for over 20 years. When William stirred, he immediately sensed the change in her. There was a luminous quality to her expression, as if she was seeing something beautiful that he couldn't quite perceive. "Good morning, my love," she whispered, her voice clearer than it had been in days. "I think today is going to be special." The palace staff had learned to read the subtle signs, and by breakfast time, there was an unspoken understanding that this day would be different from all the others. Mrs. Henderson, Catherine's longtime personal assistant, quietly canceled all appointments and made sure the family would have complete privacy. The children were summoned home from their various activities without explanation. They simply knew they needed to be there. Catherine asked to be helped into her favorite dress, a simple blue one that William had always said matched her eyes perfectly. She insisted on doing her own makeup, though her hands shook slightly as she applied the lipstick she had worn on their wedding day. "I want to look like myself," she explained to her lady-in-waiting, "not like someone who's been sick." The family spent the morning together in Catherine's sitting room, a cozy space filled with photographs and personal treasures. George sat on the floor beside his mother's chair, holding her hand and telling her about his latest essay on constitutional law. Charlotte curled up on the sofa nearby, sketching her family as they talked. Louis, usually so energetic, seemed to understand the solemnity of the day and sat quietly beside his father. "I want to tell you all something," Catherine said, her voice gentle but strong. "I have never been prouder of anything in my life than being your mother and William's wife. You three are the best parts of me, and I know you're going to do incredible things with your lives." She looked at each child individually, her eyes shining with love and pride. "George, you have your father's sense of duty and kindness. You'll make a wonderful leader someday, but more importantly, you'll make a wonderful man. Trust your heart, but don't forget to use your head." George nodded solemnly, tears streaming down his face as he squeezed his mother's hand tighter. "Charlotte, you have such a beautiful spirit and so much talent. Don't ever let anyone dim your light or tell you that you're not enough. You are more than enough. You are extraordinary." Charlotte looked up from her sketchpad, her pencil forgotten as she absorbed her mother's words. "And Louis, my sweet boy, never lose that joy and enthusiasm you have for life. The world can be serious enough without you becoming serious too. Keep laughing, keep playing, keep being the sunshine in everyone's day." Louis moved closer to his mother's chair, resting his head against her knee like he had done as a small child. The afternoon brought a stream of quiet visitors. King Charles arrived first, spending nearly an hour alone with Catherine. Their relationship had deepened over the years, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. He emerged from her room with red-rimmed eyes, but also with a peaceful expression that spoke of words exchanged and forgiveness given. The Queen Consort came next, bringing with her the kind of practical comfort that comes from a lifetime of understanding duty and sacrifice. She held Catherine's hands and spoke quietly about faith, about legacy, and about the beautiful family Catherine was leaving behind. "You have been the daughter I never had," she whispered, "and I will make sure your children always know how much you loved them." Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, had been staying at the palace for the past week. Her relationship with her mother had always been close, and seeing the woman who had raised her try to be strong while her heart was breaking made Catherine's own resolve waver for the first time. "Thank you for making me brave enough to love him," Catherine told her mother. And thank you for always believing I was enough for this life. Her siblings, Pippa and James, brought their own children to say goodbye to their beloved aunt. The little ones didn't fully understand what was happening, but they sensed the importance of the day and were unusually gentle and quiet. Catherine managed to read them one last story, her voice growing weaker but never losing its warmth. As evening approached, Catherine asked for just her immediate family to remain. The palace grew quiet around them, with staff moving like shadows to ensure the family's complete privacy. Catherine had been in her bed for the past few hours, too tired to sit up any longer, but still alert and present. I need you all to promise me something, she said, looking at William and each of the children. I need you to promise me that you'll take care of each other, but more than that, I need you to promise me that you'll find joy again. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. This sadness you're feeling now, it's because of how much love we've shared. Don't let it turn into something that stops you from loving again. William couldn't speak. He had been the strong one throughout her illness, the rock everyone else leaned on. But now the words wouldn't come. Catherine reached for his face with a trembling hand, wiping away tears he didn't realize he was shedding. You gave me the most beautiful life, she whispered to him. I was just Catherine Middleton and you made me feel like a queen. Not because of titles or palaces, but because of how you loved me. Promise me you'll find happiness again someday. William finally found his voice, broken but determined. I promise to try, he said. But I'll never stop loving you. Catherine smiled, that radiant smile that had captivated a nation. I'm counting on that. The sun was setting outside the palace windows, casting a golden glow through the bedroom where Catherine lay surrounded by her family. The children had arranged themselves around her bed like protective guardians. George holding one hand, Charlotte gently stroking her mother's hair, and Louis curled up beside her, his head on her shoulder. William sat in the chair he had barely left for days, his own hand covering Catherine's free one. Tell me about the future, Catherine whispered, her voice now barely audible. Tell me about all the wonderful things that are going to happen. William understood immediately what she was asking for. She wanted to hear about life continuing, about hope and dreams and all the beauty that would come after she was gone. George is going to graduate with honors, William began, his voice steady despite his breaking heart. And he's going to marry Emma in a beautiful ceremony, probably in Scotland where they first fell in love. They'll have children who will call me Grandpa and who will have your eyes and your laugh. George looked up at his father, tears streaming down his face, but managed to add, and I'll tell them every day about their grandmother, about how she was the kindest person who ever lived. Catherine squeezed his hand with what little strength she had left. Charlotte is going to have her first art exhibition before she turns 25, William continued. Critics will say she has a unique ability to capture light and emotion, and I'll stand in the gallery thinking about how you always saw that gift in her. She'll travel the world, painting landscapes and meeting artists, and she'll write you letters from every city she visits. Charlotte looked up from her mother's hair, her artist's eyes taking in every detail of this moment. I'll paint you in every sunset, she promised. In every field of flowers, in every beautiful thing I see. You'll be there in all of my art. Catherine's lips curved into the faintest smile. And Louis. William's voice grew warmer as he looked at his youngest son. Louis is going to make people laugh for the rest of his life. He'll probably do something completely unexpected, like become a comedian or a teacher or maybe both. He'll use that gift you gave him, that ability to bring joy to everyone around him. Louis lifted his head slightly. I'll tell jokes at your favorite charity events, he said softly. And I'll make sure everyone remembers how you laughed at all my terrible puns. Catherine's eyes crinkled with amusement even now. The roses will bloom again in the spring, William continued, his voice becoming softer, more intimate. And every year on our anniversary, I'll sit in the garden and remember our first dance. The daffodils you love will come back bigger and brighter, and the grandchildren you'll never meet will play in the same gardens where our children grew up. Catherine's breathing was becoming shallower, but her eyes remained fixed on William's face. She was listening to every word, storing them away for whatever came next. The charities you care about will continue to grow and help more people. The mental health programs you started will expand to help children all over the world. Your legacy will live on in every life that's touched by the work you began. People will remember you not just as a princess, but as a mother who raised 3 incredible children, As a woman who used her position to make the world a little bit kinder, they'll remember your grace, your warmth, your ability to make everyone feel special and valued. But most of all, William's voice broke slightly, they'll remember how much you were loved. The room had grown darker as night fell, but no one moved to turn on the lights. There was something sacred about the darkness, something peaceful about being together in this quiet space. Catherine's eyes were getting heavier, but she fought to stay present for a little longer. "I can see it all," she whispered. "It's all going to be so beautiful. You're all going to be so happy." Her voice was fading, but there was wonder in it, as if she truly could see the future unfolding before them. The palace staff had withdrawn completely, leaving the family in absolute privacy. Even the ever-present security detail had positioned themselves far enough away to give the royal family these final moments together. The only sounds were the gentle tick of the antique clock on Catherine's dressing table and the soft whisper of her increasingly labored breathing. "I love you," she said. The words meant for all of them, but her eyes on William. "I love you all so much. Promise me you'll remember that whenever you miss me. The love isn't going anywhere. It's staying right here with you." She pressed her hand weakly to her heart, then reached toward each of them. George leaned down and kissed his mother's forehead. "I love you, Mum. Thank you for everything." Charlotte did the same, whispering words of love and gratitude through her tears. Louis, the baby of the family, simply held her hand and said, "I'll miss you every day, but I'll make you proud every day too." William waited until the children had said their goodbyes, then leaned close to his wife. "Thank you for 23 years of the most beautiful love story I could have imagined. Thank you for our children, for your patience, for choosing me every single day. I'll love you forever, Catherine." "Nothing will ever change that." Catherine's eyes fluttered closed, but a peaceful smile remained on her lips. "Forever," she whispered back. The words seemed to hang in the air like a promise, like a blessing, like the final note of a beautiful song that would echo in their hearts for the rest of their lives. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Inside the palace bedroom, surrounded by all the love in the world, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, took her last breath as peacefully as she had lived, with dignity, grace, and absolute faith in the love that surrounded her. The silence that followed was unlike anything the palace had ever experienced. It wasn't empty or cold. It was full of presence, as if Catherine's love had somehow remained in the room even after she had gone. William held her hand for a long time, unable to let go of the warmth that was slowly fading. The children stayed close, none of them ready to break the sacred quiet that had settled over them. George was the first to move, gently pulling a chair closer to the bed and sitting down as if to keep vigil. Charlotte remained curled beside her mother, her artist's eye taking in every detail of Catherine's peaceful expression. Louis hadn't moved at all, still nestled against his mother's side as if he could somehow keep her with them through sheer will. "She looks so peaceful," Charlotte whispered, after what felt like hours, but had probably only been minutes, "like she's just sleeping." William nodded, unable to trust his voice. Catherine did look peaceful, more peaceful than she had in months. The lines of pain and exhaustion were gone, replaced by a serene expression that seemed almost luminous in the dim light. Dr. Matthews arrived quietly, called by the staff who had been discreetly monitoring from nearby rooms. He was a kind man who had cared for the family for years, and he moved with gentle efficiency, taking care of the medical necessities while respecting the family's need to remain close. "She went very peacefully," he told William softly. "She wasn't in any pain at the end." The immediate practical considerations fell to Mrs. Henderson, who had served Catherine faithfully for over a decade. She handled the necessary phone calls with quiet dignity, contacting family members, government officials, and the small group of palace staff who would need to begin preparations. Each call was made from a distant office, ensuring the family's privacy remained absolute. King Charles arrived within an hour, his face etched with grief but also with admiration for the courage his daughter-in-law had shown throughout her illness. He spent a few minutes alone with Catherine, saying his own private goodbye, then gathered his grandchildren into a group embrace that seemed to anchor them all to the present moment. "Your mother was extraordinary," he told them, "not because she was a princess, but because of who she was as a person. That extraordinariness lives on in each of you." His words were simple but profound, and the children held onto them like life preservers in an ocean of grief. The Queen Consort returned with Catherine's parents, all of them moving through the palace halls like people in a dream. Carol Middleton had lost her composure entirely, but Michael stayed strong enough to support his wife while dealing with his own crushing sorrow. They had watched their middle child grow from a university student into a beloved princess, and now they had to say goodbye to her forever. As the night wore on, the family began to share stories. George talked about how his mother had stayed up all night helping him with a history project when he was 12, patiently explaining complex political concepts until he understood them. Charlotte remembered the art lessons in the garden, how Catherine had encouraged her creativity while teaching her to see beauty in everyday things. Louis shared memories of bedtime stories and silly songs, of a mother who never seemed too busy or too important to listen to his rambling tales about school. William listened to his children's memories, marveling at how they captured different facets of the woman he had loved for over half his life. Catherine had been many things to many people, a princess, a patron, a public figure. But to him and their children, she had simply been the heart of their family. The person who made their house feel like a home, who remembered everyone's favorite meals and important dates, who had an endless capacity for love and patience. She made everything better just by being there, George said at one point. And William realized his eldest son had captured something essential about Catherine's nature. She had possessed a rare gift for making people feel valued and loved. Whether she was comforting a crying child at a hospital visit, or helping William through the pressures of royal duty. The formal announcement would wait until morning, giving the family time to grieve privately before the world intruded with its demands and expectations. But already William could feel the weight of what was coming. The state funeral, the global attention, the endless arrangements that would need to be made. For tonight, though, they were simply a family who had lost someone irreplaceable. What happens now? Louis asked, his voice small and uncertain. It was William who answered, drawing on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. Now we honor her by living the way she taught us to live, with kindness, with grace, with love for each other, and for the people we're called to serve. We carry her with us in everything we do. As dawn approached, the family made the difficult decision to leave Catherine's bedside. It felt like abandonment, but they all understood that she was no longer there, not really. The woman who had been the center of their universe had moved on to whatever came next, leaving behind only the shell of her physical form and the immeasurable gift of their memories. They gathered in the sitting room where they had spent the previous morning, each of them processing their grief in their own way. George sat quietly, already shouldering the additional responsibilities that would come with his mother's death. Charlotte sketched frantically, trying to capture images before they faded from memory. Louis simply cried, the honest tears of a young person experiencing profound loss for the first time. William found himself thinking about practical things, funeral arrangements, the children's education, how to maintain some sense of normalcy in the face of overwhelming change. But underneath all the logistics was a deeper realization. He would have to learn how to be himself without Catherine. She had been his partner, his anchor, his better half for so long that he wasn't sure who he was without her. The announcement came at precisely 9 o'clock that morning, delivered in the formal language of royal protocol but carrying an emotional weight that resonated around the world. It is with the deepest sorrow that we announce the death of Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales. The princess died peacefully at Kensington Palace, surrounded by her family. Within minutes, the palace gates were surrounded by people bringing flowers, cards, and personal mementos. The outpouring was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands upon thousands of mourners who felt they had lost someone they knew personally. Catherine had possessed that rare quality of making people feel connected to her, despite the formal distance that royal protocol required. The family watched the news coverage from the privacy of William's study, amazed by the global response. World leaders issued statements of condolence. Social media filled with memories and photographs. The flags at Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and government buildings across the Commonwealth were lowered to half-staff. The world was mourning with them, but somehow that shared grief felt like both a comfort and an intrusion. Look at how many people loved her, Charlotte said, watching footage of the crowds gathering outside the palace. She would have been so surprised by all this attention. It was true. Catherine had never fully grasped the impact she had on people. She had approached her royal duties with genuine humility, always focusing on the causes and people she was trying to help, rather than on her own popularity. The next few days passed in a blur of arrangements and formalities. The funeral would be held at Westminster Abbey, the same place where Catherine and William had been married over 20 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The location where they had promised to love each other until death do them part would now be where they said their final goodbye. George, despite his grief, stepped up to help with the arrangements, showing a maturity and sense of responsibility that made William proud and heartbroken in equal measure. Charlotte threw herself into creating a visual tribute for the service, working with palace staff to compile photographs that captured Catherine's life and work. Louis, still struggling with the reality of his mother's death, found comfort in helping with smaller tasks and being useful to his family. The letters and messages of condolence arrived by the thousands. Former patients from the hospitals Catherine had visited wrote about her kindness and genuine interest in their stories. Teachers and social workers from the mental health programs she had championed described how her support had changed children's lives. Ordinary people who had met her briefly at public events shared memories of her warmth and authenticity. One letter particularly moved William. It came from a young woman named Sarah, who had struggled with severe depression as a teenager. Catherine had met her during a visit to a treatment center and had taken time to really listen to her story.
"She made me feel like I mattered," Sarah wrote.
"Like my struggles were valid and my life had value. I've been healthy and happy for 5 years now, and I credit that conversation with helping me turn my life around. She saved me, and she probably never even knew it." There were hundreds of similar letters, each one a testament to Catherine's ability to see and value the individual person in front of her, regardless of protocol or time constraints. William shared many of them with the children, wanting them to understand the full scope of their mother's impact on the world. The night before the funeral, the family held their own private memorial service in the palace chapel. It was small and intimate, just immediate family and a few of Catherine's closest friends and staff members. William spoke about the woman he had fallen in love with, the mother who had raised their children with such love and wisdom, the partner who had made him a better man and a better king in waiting. "She taught me that true strength comes from gentleness," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "That real power lies in lifting others up rather than standing above them. She showed me how to lead with love instead of authority, how to serve with humility instead of expecting to be served. Every day of my life from now on, I'll try to live up to the example she set." George spoke next, sharing memories of his mother's patience and encouragement. Charlotte read a poem she had written about love that transcends death. Louis, too young and too heartbroken for formal words, simply said, "She was the best mom in the world, and I'm going to miss her forever." The funeral day dawned clear and cold, with thin winter sunlight streaming through the ancient windows of Westminster Abbey. The church was filled with royalty, heads of state and representatives from the many charities Catherine had supported. But in the front row, 3 young people and their father sat together, holding each other up through the most difficult day of their lives. The service was beautiful and dignified, filled with music Catherine had loved and readings that reflected her faith and values. The Archbishop spoke about a life well lived, about love that continues beyond death, about the legacy of kindness that Catherine had left behind. But for William and the children, the formal ceremony felt surreal, too grand and public for the private, intimate woman they had loved. The moment that broke hearts around the world came at the end of the service. As Catherine's coffin was carried from the abbey, Louis reached for his father's hand and William reached for George's, and George reached for Charlotte's. They stood together, a family forever changed but not broken, supporting each other as Catherine had always taught them to do. Later, at the private burial service at Windsor Castle, attended only by close family, William placed a single red rose on Catherine's coffin, the same type of rose from their wedding bouquet. "Until we meet again, my love," he whispered, his voice carried away by the gentle wind that rustled through the ancient trees. The weeks that followed were the hardest of William's life. The palace felt impossibly empty without Catherine's presence. Her favorite chair remained exactly as she had left it, her book still marked with bookmarks at pages she would never finish reading. The children struggled to find their footing in a world that suddenly felt foreign and uncertain. George threw himself into his studies with almost desperate intensity, as if academic achievement could somehow fill the void his mother had left. Charlotte stopped painting entirely, claiming that colors looked different now, duller and less vibrant than before. Louis had nightmares and often wandered into his father's room in the middle of the night, climbing into bed like he had done as a small child. The British people's grief seemed to mirror their own. Flowers continued to arrive at the palace gates daily, even weeks after the funeral. A memorial garden was established in Hyde Park, where people could leave tributes and find quiet spaces for reflection. The children's mental health charities that Catherine had championed saw unprecedented donations and volunteer sign-ups, as if the country was determined to continue her work in her absence. 3 months after Catherine's death, William made his first major public appearance at the opening of a new wing of Great Ormond Street Hospital, a project Catherine had been passionate about. He struggled through the speech, his voice breaking when he mentioned how much the work had meant to his wife. But he also felt her presence there, in the smiles of the young patients, in the dedication of the medical staff, in the hope that filled the bright, colorful rooms. "She's still here," he told the children that evening. "Not in the way we want her to be, but she's here in every life that's touched by the work she cared about. She's here in the way you're all growing into such remarkable young people. She's here in the love we have for each other." 6 months later, Charlotte picked up her paintbrushes again. Her first painting was of the Rose Garden at Kensington Palace, but this time the roses were painted with an almost supernatural luminosity, as if lit from within by an invisible light. When William saw it, he wept, not from sadness this time, but from recognition. Charlotte had somehow captured what Catherine had always brought to their lives, a radiance that made everything more beautiful, more hopeful, more full of love. A year after Catherine's death, the family established the Catherine Foundation, dedicated to supporting mental health initiatives for children and families. George served as a youth ambassador, speaking honestly about his own grief and the importance of seeking help when struggling with loss. Charlotte contributed artwork for fundraising events, her paintings now infused with a depth and emotional resonance that art critics called transcendent. Louis, still the family comedian but with a new gentleness in his humor, visited children's hospitals to bring laughter to young patients. The British people never forgot their beloved princess. Every year on the anniversary of her death, thousands gathered in the memorial garden to share stories and honor her memory. But perhaps more importantly, her influence lived on in the countless small acts of kindness she had inspired, in the conversations about mental health she had helped normalize, in the 3 remarkable young people she had raised to carry her values into the future. William learned to live with the constant ache of her absence, but he also learned to find joy again. He kept his promise to her. He found happiness in watching their children grow and thrive, in continuing the charitable work they had started together, in the knowledge that their love story, though cut short, had been complete and beautiful and true. On quiet evenings, he would sometimes sit in Catherine's favorite chair by the window, watching the daffodils bloom in the spring and the roses flourish in the summer. He would remember her voice, her laugh, the way she had made everything in their life feel touched by grace. And in those moments, he understood what she had meant when she said the love would stay with them. It was there in every sunset, every flower, every moment of connection between him and their children. Death had taken her from them, but it could never take away what they had shared, or the ways she had changed them all for the better. The country had watched their love story unfold over more than 2 decades, and in the end, they had witnessed something rare and precious, a love that was stronger than duty, deeper than protocol, and more enduring than life itself. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was gone, but the legacy of her love would continue forever in the hearts of those who had been privileged to know her, and in the better world she had helped create through her quiet, persistent kindness.